So today the big news is that President Obama has come out in support of the Ground Zero Mosque. He's basically said that everyone has the right to worship as they choose, and as long as the people building the mosque follow all local laws and ordinances, then he doesn't see any issue with construction going forward on a mosque. In other words, there's nothing inherently about a mosque that should be offensive to anyone. Peter King, a representative from New York, has a different opinion. He has stated that that President Obama is wrong. It is insensitive and uncaring for the Muslim community to build a mosque in the shadow of Ground Zero. Unfortunately, the president caved into political correctness. While the Muslim community has the right to build the mosque, they are abusing that right by needlessly offending so many people who have suffered so much. The right moral thing for President Obama to have done was to urge Muslim leaders to respect the families of those who died and move their mosque away from Ground Zero. I guess my first problem with King's statement is that it supposes that there is anything wrong with Muslims in general building a mosque somewhere close to Ground Zero, that there is something inherently offensive about the Muslim faith, that Muslims should have something to feel apologetic or to feel guilty about. The Muslims who are building the so-called Ground Zero Mosque, they didn't fly the planes into the buildings. They didn't pay for anybody to fly the planes into the buildings. They have in no way supported it. They haven't condoned it. They haven't justified it. Like all other Americans after 9/11, the vast majority of Muslims in America, and specifically the ones building the mosque, have come out and publicly and completely condemned the World Trade Center attacks and the attacks on 9/11 in general. I think most Muslims feel exactly as all the rest of us do, that the 9/11 attacks were an affront to them, that it was an attack on their life, because they're as much Americans as they are Muslims. It is an attack on their life and their way of living and their culture and their home. So I think arguing that Muslims in America have something to feel bad about or should feel like they are somehow apart from the rest of us in our grief regarding or in our anger over the 9/11 attacks, I think that's completely misunderstanding the Muslims who live here. Yes, the Muslims in America and the Muslims who flew planes into the building, they do share a faith. But it's at a very high level that they share their faith. They believe in the same God, and they believe in the same holy book. But apart from that, there are whole layers of cultural and political differences between the Muslims who live here and between the Muslims who are part of Al-Qaeda. It's sort of like arguing that all Christians are the same. I mean, there are, millions upon millions of Christians in this world, and they have all sorts of different beliefs. I mean, there are Coptics and Catholics and Baptists and Episcopalians and I don't even know what all else. I mean, there are so many Christians who all share different ideas and different beliefs. Yes, you all believe in God and Jesus and the Bible, but the interpretations of those things are all different. And a lot of those things are dependent upon culture and politics and so many other things. Just as most Christians wouldn't, for instance, wouldn't want to be thrown in the same basket with the Westboro Baptist Church people who protest at soldiers' funerals and carry these awful signs that say, God is punishing you or God hates fags. I mean, just as most Christians wouldn't want to be associated with that church, even though they share on a very high level the same faith, the Muslims who live here don't want to be associated with the Muslims who are members of Al-Qaeda and other extremist Islamic groups. They're not the same thing. So asking these Muslims to apologize for, or in some ways to be guilty for the acts of Muslims who are not them, who do not share all of their beliefs or even the majority of their beliefs, asking them to essentially not practice their faith because these other people who share their faith did these terrible things, it's kind of an irrational argument. It's silly. And it's a really unfair argument because these people haven't done anything wrong. they aren't they aren't being insensitive or uncaring because they don't have anything to be insensitive or uncaring about. There is nothing inherent in their faith that condones flying planes into American buildings. There's just not. So on that level, I think that a lot of the anger regarding Muslims building a mosque close to ground zero, I think it's a case of misplaced anger. The additional thing is King accused Obama of caving to political correctness, and I really hate this. Political correctness has kind of become this bogeyman for conservatives. It's something basically that we use when people who are in groups that are out of power, people who in any way challenge the status quo, whenever they bring up these issues that make the rest of us, people like you and me, normal, white, heterosexual, educated, middle-class Americans from a Christian background, when these people come along and they raise questions about the society where we are the ones in power and where we are the ones in control, I think that can seem really threatening to us. And I think that people feel like listening to those people who are not in power and who challenge the status quo and giving any kind of credence to the ideas that they hold or the arguments that they make, it seems scary to us. And so we try to paint the people who listen to them with this scary brush. Obama is caving to political correctness because he's listening to Muslims who are a very small group and who have the misfortune of being victims to a lot of really negative and nasty stereotypes, including that all Muslims want to attack America and want to kill the infidels and jihad. I think that Obama didn't cave to political correctness. He listened to the statements that people were making and saw that they have nothing to feel guilty about, so why should they feel any sort of apprehension about building a mosque so close to ground zero? There is nothing in that is inherently offensive, because there is nothing inherently offensive about Islam itself. I think he looked at other people and he thinks that these other people who are upset about it, they're afraid not because there's something wrong with Islam by itself, but because they have some very misguided ideas about all Muslims being bad and terrible and hating America, when they don't. And so instead of Obama caving to political correctness, perhaps he didn't cave into the fear of the public. He didn't cave into the bigotry that some of the people who have come out against the Ground Zero Mosque have expressed. He hasn't caved into this idea that the status quo should be maintained just because it is the status quo. The powerful shouldn't be given more power, allowed to maintain their power just because they're powerful. Political correctness is, it's not so much something scary and wrong as it is, it's just, it's a way of listening to and respecting other people whose opinions we wouldn't otherwise have to listen to. We don't have to listen to the less powerful. We do because it's the right thing to do. So to say to Obama that the right and moral thing to do was to ignore these people and to paint their entire religion with this really negative brush just because a handful of people did something terrible. I think Obama did the right thing. I think Peter King is wrong, and I think many of the 9/11 families and survivors are wrong. And that's not to say that their pain and anguish isn't to be respected and to be listened to, but at the same time, we shouldn't let the terrible things that have happened to them perpetuate another injustice against other people. Anyhow, this is my kind of long, kind of rambling rant about the World Trade Center mosque, so to speak. Thanks for letting me talk. Bye.